We caught up with former Republican presidential candidate Nikki Haley on Friday. The former ambassador and South Carolina governor explained why she is supporting Trump. But you'll also hear her views on what she thinks he should be focused on in these last 2 months until Election Day. We began by asking if she'll campaign with him. You said you're on standby. In other words, you haven't been asked to campaign. Are you advising at all on his debate preparation or speaking to the campaign?
I'm not. And, that's his choice. He can, whatever he decides to do with his campaign, he can do that. But when I called him back in June, I told him I was supportive. I think the teams have talked to each other a little bit, but there hasn't been an ask as of yet. But, should he ask, I'm happy to be helpful.
Donald Trump just finished a press conference, 3/4 of which was about grievances related to that past conviction related to alleged sexual assault. I know when you were campaigning, you said you had no reason really to question the findings of the jury related to the defamation case brought by E. Jean Carroll. I'm not asking about the specifics of the case, but if that's the focus of a press conference for a presidential candidate, A, is it the best use of his time? And what is the message to female voters to be going through this again?
Well, I think the focus for me is on policy. I think
But he's the candidate.
No, and I've always said, look, if I thought Biden or Trump were great candidates, I wouldn't have run for president. I ran because I thought I could do a better job.
You don't think he's a good candidate?
I think he is the Republican nominee, and I think put him against Kamala Harris, who's the Democrat nominee, for me, it's not a question. Now, do I agree with his style? Do I agree with his approach? Do I agree with his communications? No. When I look at the policies and how they affect my family and how I think they're going to affect the country, that's where I go back and I look at the differences. I mean, these are the candidates we have been given. You look at Kamala Harris and it's quite remarkable. She never had a debate. She never had a primary. She never had anyone vote for her. And they basically took her and in 48 hours, they put her back out there and she was this whole new candidate. But the reality is she has a record. Mm-hmm. The administration has a record. Trump has a record. And so neither are perfect. Neither are ideal.
So let's talk about the policies then. One of the things that we know is hurting American families is the high cost of childcare. The Federal Reserve said parents typically spend 50 to 70% as much per month on childcare as they do on their housing payment, which is usually the largest monthly expense. Yet yesterday, Donald Trump said,
as much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive.
That sounds out of touch with the economic statistics.
I mean, childcare is very expensive. I know just even at the time that I had little kids, I worked just to pay for our childcare.
So what part of his policy do you like on that? Because you said on your policies that's what made you back in.
It is. And what I liked were the tax cuts that he had, that Kamala wants to remove.
When she wants to also expand the child tax credit.
But that's the problem. When you get into child tax credits, you're picking winners and losers. You know what I would rather? I'd rather them just cut middle class taxes across the board. Families need more money for housing, for childcare, for gas, for everything just to live their life. I'm looking at the facts. Under Harris, they raised taxes. Under Trump, they cut taxes.
So you don't like child care tax credits that Trump's proposing either?
I think we have to do something to help child care. What I would rather say is, rather than you saying we're going to give child care tax credits, help everybody. Cut middle class taxes. That's really what people need. Let them have more money, whether it's housing, whether it's rent, whether it's groceries, whether it's gas, whether it's child care. They need some relief. And so I don't oppose a child care tax credit, but I think cutting middle class taxes across the board is better.
So we know that since Vice President Harris entered the race, the gap among women voters has grown to a now double-digit lead for her over Donald Trump, according to our CBS most recent survey. So how do they close that? Because just as recently as last week, JD Vance said he's disoriented and disturbed that the head of the most powerful teachers union in the country doesn't have a single child. He continues to say things that certainly are highlighted as being offensive to women. That is going to hurt, won't it, with female voters?
It's not helpful. It's not helpful. I mean,
is he an effective messenger for the policies you say they are stronger on?
I think that the policies, look, you can either look at style or you can look at substance. I choose as a voter to look at substance. The style, I will say.
What's the substance of that, though?
The substance is cutting taxes, making housing more affordable, immigration, national security. That's the substance. The style is, no, it is not helpful to talk about whether women have children or whether they don't. It's not helpful to say any of those things that are personality driven or anything else. I have said that, and I will continue to say to Republicans, stop it. That's not helpful. You know, if you want to talk about things, stick with policy. Americans are smart. They don't need all of this other noise to distract them. They just want to know how you're going to help them. And they're, you know, what I would suggest to every American, look at the records of each of them. You've got some stark contrast there. You know, Harris was not strong on the border. Trump was strong on the border. Harris wanted to eliminate fracking. Now she's taking that back. But energy production was not as strong as it was under the Trump administration.
It's at a record high right now, actually. But when you listen to some of the things, you said you don't like handouts, and you're concerned about sort of the fiscal conservatism here. Former President Trump pledged to mandate that the government and insurance companies pay for fertilization treatments or IVF treatments for women. Is that a policy you would support, that insurance companies or the federal government pay for that?
It's not a policy I support any more than it's a policy of Kamala Harris to remove private health insurance or Medicare for all. Look, at the end of the day,
but this is the head of the Republican Party. This is the Republican nominee.
I know, but Margaret, you also have to talk about the head of the Democrat Party. You know, don't just look at one and not look at the other. When you talk about Medicare for all, when you talk about removing private health insurance, you might as well be Canada. You might as well look at socialist health care. We never want to get to that point because you're not going to get IVF or anything else, cancer drugs or anything else when it comes to that. When you look at health care, we need to know, both of my children were products of fertility. We want that option to be available to everyone. But the way you do it is you don't mandate coverage. Instead, you go and you make sure that coverage is accessible and you make sure that you're doing everything you can to make it affordable.
You would still urge people who identify as Republican to support policies that you say are not conservative.
I don't agree with Trump 100% of the time. I don't have to like him or agree with him 100% of the time to know that life for Americans would be better under the policies where we have strong immigration, where we have law and order, where we have an economy where we can look at opportunities, where we've got national security that is strong. I don't need to sit there and like someone to decide those policies are better.
But it's grading on a curve.
It's not grading on a curve. I think it's how you look at it, because I would ask you, how are people going to be better going through the next 4 years like we have the last 4 years? Any American will tell you their life is not better. So our goal is, how do we make life better? Instead of making it about the personalities, can we not start saying, what do we all agree about on the policies? Because there's some serious policy concerns.
Let me ask you about China, because this is a very serious threat picture around the world right now. You were just in Taiwan for the first time. Former President Trump said Taiwan should pay us for defense, and the U.S. is no different than an insurance company. How concerned were Taiwanese officials by that comment?
First of all, when I went to Taiwan, I think it's important that Americans know what I saw. I met with the president, the vice president, the defense minister. We were on a military base. We met with their intelligence officers. The life of a Taiwanese every single day. First of all, they have 30 million cyber attacks a month in Taiwan. They have aggression from air and sea by the Chinese every single week. I wanted to see if Taiwan, if they were victims waiting for a handout or what they were saying. And I was so impressed because they're not waiting for help from anyone. 10 years ago, their Chinese investment was 84%. Today, their Chinese investment is 11%. They are proactively not investing in China. Their mandatory military service, starting at 18 years old, they had started at 4 months. They've now increased it. You have to serve militarily at 18 for a year. They've, while cutting that investment, they are getting ready militarily. They're doing joint training with America, which is fantastic. When it comes to our allies, when it comes to freedom-loving countries, we need to be the best friend to them that we can. Because if China takes Taiwan, what we saw with Russia and Ukraine, it affected 1% of GDP, and you saw the economy shake from that. If China takes Taiwan, it would be 10% of the global GDP. That's $10 trillion compared to the $1 trillion in Ukraine. We need to care about that. We need to care about it from freedom. We need to care about it from the economy. We need to care about it from security. And we need to care about the fact that if Russia takes Ukraine and China takes Taiwan, we can't assume we're going to be okay if we live in a silo, because that's not the case.
But what you just laid out is a policy that's strongly in defense of Taiwan.
It is.
Are you saying that the next president should commit, because neither JD Vance nor Donald Trump have said that they would send U.S. troops to defend Taiwan?
I don't think we need to send U.S. troops to defend Taiwan.
Joe Biden said he would.
Taiwan
he told my colleague at 60 Minutes.
Taiwan does not want troops. What Taiwan is asking for is joint military training and to partner with us so that they can make weapons to defend themselves. And they want intelligence sharing. Look, I'm the wife of a combat veteran. The last thing we want to do is just keep thinking about sending troops. If anything, we want to prevent war. The best way to prevent war from China is to start arming Taiwan now and making sure that they're ready.
When you were campaigning, you said when President Trump left office, China was militarily stronger than before. I mean, they've only increased that in terms of their nuclear development and their expansion of their military. You said Trump did not put us on a stronger military foothold in Asia. He did not stop all the theft of American technology. He had moral weakness in trying to befriend President Xi. If this is the threat of this century, how can you say he is the commander-in-chief you can support now?
Because I look at what happened under the Harris administration. You look at this situation.
But aren't we supposed to judge that record?
No, we're going to judge both records. So let's first look at the Harris administration. Russia never would have invaded Ukraine. China would not be circling.
They did not withdraw from Ukraine.
No, well, go further. They wouldn't have started war with Ukraine, and China would not have gotten more aggressive with Taiwan if we would have not had that fall in Afghanistan. It's not that we left Afghanistan, it's how we left it. It was dangerous, it was careless, and it was weak, and we have suffered ever since. We didn't have any conflicts under Trump. I was his UN ambassador. We put more sanctions on Russia. We kept China at bay. We let our allies know that they were protected. All of that happened. Now, what I will say to both Trump and Harris is the worst thing we can do is walk back from our friends right now. And so we need to be a friend to Ukraine, not make them beg. We need to be a friend to Taiwan, prepare so that China doesn't do it. We need to be a friend to Israel and not say we're going to give you and then take it back like what Harris and Biden did. We've got to start being friends with our allies. I will say it until I'm blue in the face. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. And you have to be a friend to get a friend. So look, there are no perfect administrations here by any means, but Trump was definitely stronger when it came to national security as opposed to the Harris administration. And that's just a fact.
But how can you be confident that he will be? You're talking about 4 more years. When he is saying things like this, he's talking about like a protection racket for Taiwan. They have to pay us.
No, and I'll be the first one to say that's not the way it should be. Look, I'm always going to tell you the truth on where I think. This is not blind support for anyone. This is saying don't sit there and threaten Taiwan that you're going to, on being friends. This is, they have 50% of our chip production. They are a friend and ally to us, and they're a democracy. Let's have the, if anything, this is what I would tell Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. What you need to do with Taiwan is help them economically, militarily, diplomatically. Economically, we should have a free trade agreement with Taiwan, without question. Diplomatically, we should require that Taiwan become a member in the United Nations and in the World Health Organization. And militarily, we should do whatever we can to joint exercise, share intelligence, and do what we can.
You have talked about the isolationism in the party, and it troubles you. This past week, Justice Department brought a case against Russia regarding a $10 million disinformation campaign in which it was using, in part, right-wing media. Do you think that this isolationist streak is being fueled by the Russian state? The problems you are diagnosing right now, that you are also saying Donald Trump is echoing in some way.
Margaret, this is bigger than that. This is the tip of the iceberg. First of all, look at what happened in Hochul's office with the Chinese influence and what was happening there.
The governor here in New York.
Look at the murder for hire plot on U.S. soil, which I was named in by Iran. look at the Russian disinformation, which didn't start this year. This has been going on for years. Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea to some extent, they have spent years on the cheapest form of warfare, which is how do you divide Americans and cause chaos. They have done that. When I was running my presidential campaign, the FBI had a separate hearing with me to let me know that Iran was meddling in our influencing the election with our campaign. They were
to hurt you or to help you?
To hurt me.
To hurt you.
You know, the murder for hire plot named me. That's by Iran. This has been going for a long time. And Americans need to wake up. Don't just look at Russia. Don't just look at China. Don't just look at Iran. The biggest lesson we need to take is when you look at social media, I bet you a larger percentage of those are foreign engagements. And when I was in Taiwan, they would tell you they could look at Facebook. Anytime Taiwan put something out, it was suppressed. Anything China put out, it was played up. Why is that? Our social media companies owe Americans from a national security perspective. How many of these foreign bots are dividing us? Every bit of our government, influencers, press, and media need to say how many of these foreign influencers are buying people, and what are we doing to protect us? Nothing. No one's talking about TikTok. Biden and Trump both said they were against TikTok. They're both on it now. Kamala's on it now. China loves that. America needs to wake up when it comes to foreign actors.